I'm not using the seeds right now. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm using speedrun.com to check their PBs.
From what I've gathered, Buane's got a 132 and zer0rush has a 134, so this one should be a very close race.
Yep, I gonna second what you just said. That's correct from what I just read. All right, they're off in the escape segment. As everybody knows, the escape segment is not really a fun segment. There's no, you haven't gotten anything yet. You haven't gotten any items, no boots, nothing. So it's all movement based, and there's pretty specific movement mechanics that come into play when it comes to getting a really good time in this segment. All right, so they pick up the sword from the fallen uncle, who will be avenging, hopefully, by the end of the run. And like I said, this segment is all about movement. There's a bunch of these green guards that like to get in the way, so that can be pretty obnoxious, but it's just all about being mindful, knowing what's coming, and doing your best to anticipate. Now, these guys are pretty close in PB, as we just mentioned, so you know, anything can happen. This could be a close race, this could not be a close race, but you know, just judging by that, I hope it stays pretty close the whole time. And there's no major mistakes by either of these runners. I mean, we saw a couple major mistakes in the last run, made it very, very interesting. Was very unfortunate to see M-Chan fall the way he did and have to mirror out of the Trinex fight, but alas, you know, that happens at all levels of the game. I've seen people with sub 130s do that, so it's just one of those things, you know. It's unfortunate, but that's how this game works. There's a lot of RNG, and there's a lot of, you know, tight factors like that that can create lots of different scenarios and situations that cause you to lose time. So we'll see how these runners handle it. All right, a 2:56 key there by zer0rush, which is a pretty solid time. And it looks like Buane had right around 3 minutes for the key there. So just a few seconds disparity. Again, this is all movement based. So if you have slightly better movement, you are going to, you know, be able to save a couple seconds here and there in this segment. zer0rush making good use of the boomerang there. It's always nice, and you know, to be mindful that you have the boomerang in that room, because those 3 guards can just kind of form a wall that you can't get past. So coming on the way back, you do have the boomerang, and it is a good tool to use to just push them out of your way.
Yes, very true. I know I literally had to use that every now and then myself when I've been very low on hearts and just not wanted to pick up the safety heart at the top of that hallway.
Right, yeah, the boomerang, especially because you just auto-equip it. There's plenty of spots here where you can use it to get snakes out of the way, get rats out of the way, pick up hearts. So, yeah, it is actually pretty useful. zer0rush is actually having a very, very good escape time right now. on through the second half, where both of them are in the sewers right now, just picked up that key, making their way into the water section. Walking is slower in water, so you want to make sure you're out of the water as much as possible in these segments. And pumping, which I'll briefly explain, is if you're going left or up in the game and you tap in any of the cardinal directions that are perpendicular, then it will save you a few pixels of movement. It'll boost you a few pixels here and there. So pumping is a lot more effective in the water. Buane's getting very unfortunate rat RNG in that hallway, but zer0rush, wow, he's getting to this, pulling the switch sub at about 548. 552 for zer0rush there. Really good escape time. Buane pulling on the switch now, and it looks like he will be able to make it through at just about 6 minutes flat.
A very good time indeed, considering that I think it's a 5:45 has been one of the average, fastest times, if I recall, to a 5:55.
Yeah, that sounds about right. All right, both runners opted to pick up the Sanctuary Heart, which I expect most of the runners in the tournament to do. Even runners that have want to need 6s still pick up the Sanctuary Heart, so I expect to see that fairly often. Assume it's pretty popular. All right, so as we make our way to escape, the biggest places, or the biggest factors that can lose time here are these Octoroks. There's plenty of them in all of these screens. They like to move quickly and randomly. zer0rush tried to slash one out of the way, it just dodged him and bonked him instead. So, these things are really annoying when it comes to trying to save time. It's hard to anticipate them, and when you do get hit, it can be very frustrating. zer0rush making it into the Eastern Palace just a few seconds before Buane here. Good, decent cannonball RNG, not the worst. Buane got pretty unfortunate cannonball RNG. Obviously, you want to be on the left side for most of that, or have them all come on one side or the other, so that you don't have to wiggle too much. That'll probably lose you the most time.
And a beautiful Stalfos room. Do you want to explain the Stalfos trick there, or should I?
I'll explain it real quick. So there's a specific box in that room that is the spawn box for the skeletons, and when you step in that box, the skeletons will spawn in the cardinal directions in relation to Link. So we enter the spawn box at a very specific point so that the top skeleton spawns in the wall, which causes it to despawn. The skeleton that's to the bottom of Link spawns in the pot, so that actually despawns as well, and then we actually use the pots to kill the left and right ones before they actually appear on the screen. So that's how you get through that room so quickly.
And I guess since zer0rush is just about to come up to the big test, the big key skip in a sense. I'm explaining this horribly. Basically taking a damage boost through the anti-fairies to get his big key without having to destroy everything in the room.
Yeah, that was a good explanation. All you do is you damage boost through something, and you use the iframes to put yourself on the pot, on the switch, so that when the iframes wear off, you're standing on it, and you still get knocked away, but you still get to press the switch when they wear off. So they're picking up the bow and arrow here, making their way past the green Igor in this dark room. And this is fairly, you know, basic trivial movement still. No boots yet, no fancy dashing or anything like that.
So do you think they'll go with the upper right corner or the bottom right corner for the armless fight?
I always assume people will take the top right start to the fight. It's just the most popular thing I've seen. But I don't know what these runners do specifically. I don't really have much experience watching these runners. So it looks like we got zer0rush doing top right. Again, like I said, that's the most popular. Clean fight, shoots an extra arrow but gets a clean fight, and it looks like Buane is doing the bottom right, so we got one of each, so we'll see how this goes for Buane.
Very true. I know ACM is a fan of the bottom right corner on that one because it also makes you, you know, get a practice in for your ice armors fight later on.
Yeah, the ice armors fight is a little different as well, but yeah, when you start from the bottom there, it's very, very similar type of fight. So also, you know, uses an extra arrow, Buane there, so it's a very similar fight, and they are both out cleanly, and now they are on their way to pick up the boots. So this is kind of a turning point in the run. We're done with the super early game, and now we are able to do our first minor glitch of the game, which is called spin speed. You can activate this glitch by holding the sword out, letting a sword charge, and then when you release the charge, you actually tap A exactly a frame after the sword is released, after you press or pick your finger up from B, and that puts you in this weird glitch state where you can't use the sword, and when you walk off of stairs, you can move freely at dash speed.
And looks like Buane's opting to pick up the 300 rupees at the back of Salasrala's hut along with the bombs, so he'll probably be using those on Land Molus.
Ooh, a bomb land molus strat. I haven't seen that in a while, so that will be a lot of fun to see how that goes for him. And very good point. I was going to make a note of the rupee count for both of them. Buane had 7, zer0rush had 6. Unfortunately, zer0rush fails his first attempt at a spin dash there, but he gets it the second try and gets into the house for the book. But anyway, back to what I was saying. zer0rush is going for the tree rupee route, and he only has 6 coming out of Eastern, which is usually where you pick up most of the rupees. You can get more drops later along the way, so we'll see how that goes for him. But when you don't have a lot of rupees, it kind of makes the tree rupee route a little bit annoying, so we'll see what happens.
Most likely he'll use the pull tree 2 times instead of 3. Well, 3 times instead of 2. He'll just probably take the pool before Death Mountain and collect the 20 rupees there as well to make up his total.
Right. So both of these runners having a little bit of trouble with spin speed in this first segment, which is not too uncommon. It's one of those tricks that a lot of people can do, and a lot of people can do successfully, but there are moments where it just feels like it does not want to activate. You miss it several times in a row, so it's not uncommon to see people have to retry that a couple times.
Very true. I know I've learned basically for some of them, if it's looking like I'm not getting it, to just stop and just keep going, because it's going to eventually cost me more time.
Right. And the spin speeds, there are certain areas where they save a lot of time, but in those couple of screens, they don't really save too much time. So usually only 1 or 2 tries is really worth it before you should just try using dashes instead.
If I recall correctly, it's about, what, a second total?
It depends on the screen. I know that going to and from the library there, and in one instance, it might not even be a full second that it will save. So if you get it, it saves time, but if you don't, the other way is not too much slower.
Ooh, and zer0rush getting the very good cycle in the cannonball room, being able to just straight dash through that, RNG.
Yeah, it's always nice knowing you get that RNG and just comfortably dashing up there. But there's a lot of dashing going on in Desert. There's not really, again, too much to talk about. While we do have the boost now, and we've used spin speed a couple of times, the actual dungeon only allows for a lot of dashing back and forth because there's long hallways. So it's a pretty straightforward and pretty simple dungeon. The biggest factor in this segment is the Land Molus fight, which we will talk about when we get there.
Very true. I know, as you pointed out earlier, that Buane, really doesn't like Land Molus. I think we all don't in the early game, and even in the late game.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier in the late game, and a little bit tougher at the same time, because it is late game, and there's usually a lot more pressure there. But when you only have bombs and arrows to fight Landmo with at first, it can be very frustrating.
Oh, and zer0rush attempting the very dangerous spin speed on the steps outside of Desert, which I know if you screw up, you are most likely to fall.
Yeah, if you fall there, you have to go back around through the first part of the dungeon again, so that is pretty risky, but a lot of people use a pause buffer there so that if they do activate the spin speed, they kind of catch themselves with the pause buffer and then can change the direction coming out of it.
And zer0rush basically just about to go into his Land Moles fight. So
Pretty good time still.
Yes, agreed with you there. He'll most likely use the bonk strat, which is to bonk off the back wall, and then a couple of slices to line himself up perfectly with the center of the Land Moles, or Land Mole. I am not sure how best to describe them.
Looks like he's having a pretty decent fight so far. His movement's really good here. His timing for the arrows is very good as well, so only one missed arrow so far, and he cleans up the fight really nicely. That was a very good fight.
Yes, that was. Yes, that was.
And a sub 17 pendant catch is a very good time. So this is, I think you said his PB was a 129, but his light world is going
134 actually.
Oh, 134, but his light world is going fantastically. This seems like higher than 134 gameplay. So zer0rush doing a really good job. Now Buane entering the fight, like you said, he picked up the bombs before, so we'll see if he decides to use those. Nope, he goes just straight to the bow. He's got plenty of arrows, and it looks like that's what he's most comfortable with. So he'll save those bombs for later. But there is a cool little bomb strat you can do for Landmo. There's a little setup that is very uncommon, but makes the first phase or the first cycle of the fight a lot more consistent with damage. As you can see, the timing is pretty tight for where you need to stand and when you need to shoot your arrows. So
sorry to interrupt you, but zer0rush is just attempting the fake flippers and gets it in his first go. Fake flippers is basically a trick that involves you falling into water within. Because the game allows you 1 frame before it starts realizing you are drowning, and then basically if you transition between screens, it will assume you have the flippers and that you can swim.
Yes, and that is actually a very, very risky glitch, because if you take damage while you're in the fake flipper state, then you can soft lock the game. And I don't know if this has been explained, but I'll just briefly explain that if that happens in this tournament, that would usually nullify a run and make it invalid. But in the tournament, they've decided that there's a special rule. If you do take damage during fake flippers, as long as you don't hit any buttons except for select, you can press select and then save and quit. And as long as you return to the screen that you made the mistake in, which is the screen that Buane's in right now, you can continue the run as per usual. So zer0rush has picked up the mire here from the old man. He's making his way up Death Mountain, getting some poor RNG, as is per usual with Death Mountain. Unfortunately taking the second heart of damage there. Almost squeezed past that, but
Buane also gets the fake flippers as well. I do also have to say, I believe that's only for the brackets that you have to return to the exact screen. However, in the group stages, they are allowing you to save and quit to Link's house and just continue from there.
Thanks for the correction. So
Not a problem.
Now we got zer0rush is heading into Tower of Hera right now.
And they're both on very good pace right now, which is amazing on that one.
This is still a little interesting for zer0rush because of the rupee count. Like I said, most of the rupees are picked up in Eastern, and then if they're not picked up in Eastern, they're usually some enemies that'll drop rupees in Desert, but there aren't really many places in Hera to pick up rupees. So he's going to have to pick up some extra rupees from the tree rupees that he's going to be pulling on later.
And zer0rush getting the, I guess, is it affectionately known as the coffee break, no matter which version of the game, either randomizer or NMG, I guess?
Alright, zer0rush getting the boom dash there, so he hits the switch and doesn't have to hit it in the next room, saves a couple of frames doing that.
And while zer0rush is picking up his big key, Buane is just about to enter Hera.
Very fun Beatles room right there. Oh, unfortunately, zer0rush steps on the little star mark on the floor, which causes the gaps in the floor to change. Only loses him a second or two, but good heads-up play right there. And it looks like Buane is opting to not use the boomerang strat like zer0rush did, but he does pull out the bow and has a similar effect where he's standing on the inside of those pegs when the crystal switch is activated. So that'll save a little bit of time in the next room.
And while Buane is waiting on the tower room, zer0rush picks up his moon pearl by doing the bomb jump. Would you care to explain that one? I know generally that we offer that with a dash, but I'm no good with explaining the exact pixel location on that one.
So the way it works with the bomb jump is if you are lined up properly, the bomb jump will boost you only a few pixels. Pretty much, you have I think an extra 2 pixels to work with off of the ledge that you can stand on when getting boosted. But if you dash, that increases, so you don't need to be within 2 pixels away from the ledge if you use a little bonk animation while the bomb is exploding.
If I recall, I think it's 6 with a bonk and 2 without.
Yeah, that sounds correct. I know it based on the amount of pixels of leeway you have. So yeah, that sounds correct. It's 2 pixels without and 6 pixels of leeway with the bonk.
I also have to admit, very beautiful land mullets fight. Moldorm fight from zer0rush. Sorry about that one, everybody. Land mullets on the brain.
Yeah, zer0rush is on very good pace right now. The Moldorm fight, like you said, went well for him, and everything's gone well for him so far, including that I believe it was a 3-cycle landmass. So there you see he just pulled on his first tree that gave him some blue rupees, and he had to pick up all those. Now he's at 27, and he will have plenty of rupees heading into the tower now. So the way the tree rupees route works is you pull on that first tree, it gives you 5 rupees, or excuse me, blue rupees, which are 5 apiece. And then if you kill 4 enemies and don't take damage by the time you get to the next tree that you are able to pull on for rupees, it will give you 4 red rupees, which are 20 apiece. So he'll be able to pick up 80 rupees from the next tree. Now the reason we're collecting these rupees is we need to be able to pay Kiki the monkey to follow us in the next segment, and we also need to pay him 100 rupees to open the dungeon for us. So we need 110 rupees total before we get there.
Which I know a lot of runners have openly stated that they really wish that, you know, they didn't have to pay Kiki on that one, but it is what it is there. Right.
I mean, it would be nicer to not have to collect those rupees, but you know what? He's just a greedy little monkey. And he's the only way we can get into the dungeon, so we can get the hammer, which is a very, very important tool.
It looks like zer0rush opting to not go for powder this time. I know it's been a debate between a lot of the 130, the runners in the 130 range about whether or not they would to pick up powder for this tournament or not, just for the safety.
Yeah, powder is a pretty big safety. It really helps a lot if you have issues with the late game, you're not confident with the late game. It just gives you that extra little added bit of comfort when you can just use it on anti-fairies or things every now and then.
And while zer0rush is just about to enter Agaton's tower, Buane just got to the Master Sword and is pulling it right now.
And Buane also skipped the mushroom on the way in. I'm not sure if we'll pick it up on the way out, though.
I believe the current route is to pick it up on the way out, because if you pick it up on the way in, it will respawn.
Ooh, zer0rush trying to kill those enemies with the dash there, and that's for prize pack manipulation. So the reason he was so adamant about killing them with the dash, he got lucky there because he didn't get the drop killing with the slash, but if you kill enemies with a dash, they automatically will not drop anything from their prize pack. So that's why there we go, Buane got the mushroom on the way out. So and the reason we do that is because the way prize packs work is each prize pack has a group of enemies that can drop an item in that prize pack, and the item that drops is actually sequential. So the first enemy you kill in that prize pack, if it drops, it will drop the first item, and then the next enemy you kill, if you get the drop, it'll drop the second item, so on and so forth. And we want to manipulate it so that we get a fairy later in the game in the Turtle Rock segment, one of the later segments where it's very useful to know that you will most likely get a fairy drop.
Very true, considering that I know, basically if you are choosing to not take powder, Turtle Rock can be a murder, for the run.
Yeah, so it is nice to guarantee that that fairy drop at least at some point in that dungeon.
Real quick, since we are just about to get to Ganon on zer0rush's side, do you want to start asking chat whether, how many blue balls do you think he will get?
That sounds good to me. Let's, everyone place your bets on the amount of blue balls. Complete RNG for both runners, but can make you lose or gain a good amount of time.
I know my bet is on take the average of 3, but here's hoping he gets the 4 just to allow Buane just to catch up the tiniest bit.
Right, Buane isn't terribly far behind, but he could use a little bit of luck here, which would help even out the things for him.
If zer0rush does get good RNG, he's looking at a sub 30 light world, which is very good.
So this is something I was going to note for zer0rush before, and now Buane as well. They're both actually very low on arrows, so they're going to have to find some way to make sure they have enough arrows for later in the game. Buane's about to get an arrow drop, so he'll have 7, and zer0rush only has 6 going into the Dark World, which is pretty low. So hopefully they'll get some drops, and if they don't, they'll have to figure out some pickup spots that they can default to.
Most likely they will take the arrows that are on the way to the big key chest in Pod. When you fall down the hole in order to go to collect them, or to collect the big key, there is a bomb. There's a 1 bomb and a set of arrows in the 2 pots at the bottom of that room.
All right, how many was that for Buane? 4?
I think it was. You mean zer0rush? I think it was
Yeah,
5-ish,
no mistake.
maybe 6. But I think Chad can correct me on that one.
All right, now we got Buane going into the fight, and this is going to be just over 30 minutes. A 30:04 light world for zer0rush, so this is a very, very strong showing for him.
Yes, true. And zer0rush on his way to Pod to pick up, his hammer along with his monkey, while Buane is working on Aghanim. I don't think I've seen a blue ball yet.
I think I might have seen one, but I'll be able to know when the fight ends. Oop, there's another one. There we go. Yep, that was 2 for him. So he made up some time there. He actually made up 6 seconds for each blue ball, and then another 6 seconds for dodging the extra lightning cycle. So he makes up a good what is 6 times 3? I'm blanking right now. 18 seconds there, almost 20 seconds, just on RNG alone.
Which is something we all wish we could actually, get good RNG on that fight all the time.
Yeah, it is one of the unfortunate parts of the run. Alright, so zer0rush has paid off Kiki, he's gotten into the dungeon, and now he's going on a series of key collecting and then mirror segments, or, mirror portions of the run. Unfortunately taking a hit there on his way down to get this key down here, and then he'll mirror out again.
Well, most likely, you forgot the actual hammer jump, which I know both of our runners are very familiar with using, so that should be just, so that should be something, interesting to watch.
Yeah, the hammer jump is a very neat trick, and it's definitely something that makes a lot of newer runners nervous, and it is very precise, so I'll explain that as we get a little closer. But yeah, all zer0rush has to do here is pick up the big key. There it is. Buane is now paying off Kiki to follow him, and then as long as he does not take any damage on the way to the dungeon, which happens more often than you think, he should be fine. All right, there we go, and he's there cleanly. All right, so zer0rush is making his way over to the hammer jump. So this is a very precise. I'm assuming he's going to do the 2-bomb method based on his pacing. He seems to know a significant amount about optimal strats in the game. So he's going to pick up both of these pots to collect the bombs. He's going to pause buffer to the bombs, make sure he's on a specific Y pixel, and place the bomb. He's going to plant another bomb, throw it over to... Ooh, unfortunately he misses it there. Throw it over to break the wall while he's doing this trick. The 2-bomb method is definitely much trickier and tighter, but it does save a little bit of time. So yeah, like I said, he places the bomb on a specific Y pixel, and then Link has to be on a specific Y pixel in relation to the bomb to boost himself in a very specific point that he can kind of clip into that rail and then just get to the hammer and be on his way. So unfortunately he failed that the first time. Like I said, it's pretty specific trick. He was just, I think, maybe a pixel or maybe 2 pixels off for Link's positioning in relation to the bomb.
Yes, I'm pretty sure correct, though I do have to say from what I have heard, the horizontal pixels for that is very forgiving, which is actually very nice on that one.
Yeah, the X pixels are pretty wide. I mean, there are points if you stand in specific places that you'll get boosted short, but for the most part, it's pretty forgiving, and you can be in almost any of the X position. Very, very solid Mimics Room map coming out there from zer0rush, and I believe he just got the an arrow drop on the way out too, so that was some good luck there. Now we see Buane doing the same thing. The hammer jump, doing the 2-bomb strat. Like I said, makes it a little tighter. Pause buffering a little bit here, make sure he gets in position, and nice, he gets a first try. Good for him. That helps save a little bit of time there.
Now zer0rush making his way towards the turtle room, one of the more annoying rooms here in Pod. Basically, you gotta clear out all these turtles, you know, with either the hammer and sword spins, but gets it very nice and clean. And on his way to Helmasaur.
On his way to Helmasaur with full health. Now, this Helmasaur is one of the fights where the Sanctuary Heart that I mentioned at the very beginning actually comes into play. Everything that Helma does 2 hearts worth of damage, so you can actually take an extra hit here, having that extra 7th heart instead of 6 that you get from the Sanctuary Heart. This fight is actually fairly RNG heavy too, with how Helmasaur moves, number 1, and the types of attacks he gets, or he decides to give you. Buane having a little bit of trouble in that Mimic's room, but okay, he cleans it up pretty nicely, and he decides to pick up some extra arrows there. And a very, very solid fight there from zer0rush. Looked like he got some pretty good RNG. I didn't see any fireballs, so that's the best RNG you can get in terms of the attacks he gives you.
It looked like it was just about to start when he got his final hit on it. And let's hope Buane gets the same, you know, RNG that zer0rush did for that one. Because Helmasaur is a run killer. Though it takes 17 hits with the hammer and, well, 4 bombs is what the developers intended, but almost no one uses that strat.
Right, most people just use the sword out hammer method.
Which does extend the hammer's hitbox, if I recall correctly, so that is an actual benefit to using that.
Yes, it gives you a little bit of like a space, like a kind of like a ruler to see how close you are to see where the hammer will actually hit him, and it slows Link's movement down a little bit, so it makes the fight a little bit easier in that sense. But I do believe, it's been debated, but I do believe that if you're not holding your sword out, it's a little faster.
I believe you are correct there, since Link's movement is slowed to 1 pixel per frame on that one. But still.
Ooh, getting some unfortunate fireball RNG here on Buane's side. Cleans up the fight. Very nice. zer0rush dodging that little pterodactyl dinosaur bird monster there, which it's a pretty tight window when you do the dash the way he did. It's a very tight window. Ooh, and he almost gets clipped there. He started his hammer dash pretty early, which can be risky if that guy there quick charges you, but he fortunately got past it without getting clipped by him. But yeah, as I was saying, when you do that dash the way that zer0rush did it there, it is a tight window to stop your dash and then start it going to the left.
Very true, and right now zer0rush is picking up his shovel, where he will be digging up the ocarina in order to activate his flute following that.
Oh, and he gets the 2 digs, the double dig. That could be pretty finicky area, especially depending on where you put your warp. So sometimes you'll see that. It's not uncommon.
Very true. Now, I guess the Usain Bolt, I think, is the nickname for the red guard here if you're going for the spin strat.
Yep, the fastest guard in all of Hyrule. And whether you're going for the spin strat or not, he is Usain Bolt. And the spin strat actually makes it a little bit easier to get past him. If you're just using straight, cardinal dashes with the boots, it's a little bit tougher. You have to adjust your movement a little bit.
And Buane is on his way to pick up his flute as well, getting a very good hammer dash there, which is basically if you press the Y button at the same time as you would hit the A button, or the button needed to dash, the game, although this is only in the 1.0 version of the game, it will allow you to dash with an item, which, is a very useful tool for us.
Yeah, there's a number of places where item dashes come in handy. Right now, where zer0rush is, he does a hammer dash there. And he did that earlier, and I guess I should have explained that. When you dash with the hammer, when you do a hammer dash, it has the hammer's hitbox out in front of Link, so you can dash through multiple objects that are affected by the hammer. But you don't automatically you don't automatically hammer enemies, so it can be a little risky in that sense too. Buane getting the speed and getting past Usain Bolt quickly.
Now, most likely he will be turning in the mushroom now instead of heading into the dark world immediately, as I know most players tend to pick up the powder at this point. Do you think he'll go and collect ether as well, or not? Because I know some runners choose to do that now and others don't.
Yeah, it is a personal thing. Again, I'm not very familiar with Buane, so we'll just have to see what he decides to go for. But it looks like he's just going straight towards Thieves right now. I wonder when he will decide to utilize the powder. zer0rush getting through the beginning of Thieves Town pretty handily. Those first few rooms can be annoying with the RNG from the movement of those Zazics, but unfortunately doesn't get the God Pixel. Reacts pretty nicely though, gets some bad RNG and enemies in his face, but just decides to walk the rest of the way. Down to 4 hearts now. He's taken a decent chunk of damage, and that can come into play with the blind fight. Blind is a scripted fight. It's, you know, if you practice it enough, it's something that you'll do the same way 99% of the time, but there is the occasional mistake going off script, so we'll see if that comes into play and if there's any jitters or anything from getting low on health from zer0rush.
zer0rush on his way to pick up the False Maiden and then his Titan's Mitts, and then he will go battle Blind.
Let's see here if Buane's going to get. Oh, he walks here. Oh, he got decent RNG, but he decided to walk. I guess he's just more comfortable with that. And now he's just dealing with the snake that decided to just chase him around. So, yeah, if you're really not confident with the dash there and reacting to the RNG as you go up, walking is just as good a strategy. It might lose a little bit of time, but you know, it's better to be safe in that room because that room can cost you a lot of health and a lot of time.
Very true, and zer0rush just about into the blind fight, which no matter what weapon you have, will take 9 hits to defeat blind.
Yeah, there's a very specific setup for each phase of this. You end up, you know, starting starting each phase in the same spot and ending each phase in the same spot. And if you do the fight cleanly and accurately, you'll end the fight where zer0rush just ended the fight. Very good battle there from him.
And a very clean blind fight too. So now he will be off to rescue the dwarf and pick up his tempered sword.
Yep, going on a little bit of a collecting spree before heading into the Skull Woods segment of the game. We'll see Buane here has picked up the Maiden now, making his way to get the mitts, and then he'll be fighting Blind shortly as well. Something I want to note, this is a very minor thing, but you'll see that Buane didn't move at all once he went through that door. And he started to dash, and then he just dashed straight through the door. He hit the door, the key unlocked the door, and he continued his dash through the door. We call that a key dash, and what that is you line up the pixels. Ooh, zer0rush not using the bomb accurately, so he has to use another bomb there. But yeah, you line up the pixels of the dashes with the with something in the room so that you'll hit the door at a specific point in the dash, so that you won't bonk. You'll actually touch the wall, or excuse me, touch the door, but unlock it before you actually bonk into it.
If I recall correctly, it is a pixel that is a multiple of 4.
Yes, that's correct.
And Buane getting his line fight down, so he shall be proceeding to pick up his tempered sword as well. Well, his dwarf, the tempered sword, and then on to Skull Woods, most likely.
Yep, and you saw there that he finished his fight in the same spot that Zero did, so he had a clean fight as well. And I know, I didn't know this until I just watched, but the only difference in scripted fight that I've seen is Amchan's fight from the last race. He did the fight a little differently, but it looked like it was something that he's practiced. So it might be a slightly easier version, but for the most part, the fight that you just saw from both Buane and zer0rush is the common way to fight him.
zer0rush picking up his tempered sword. Apparently it costs 10 rupees to get your sword upgraded, but what? I'm blanking on the actual standard pun on that one, so I'm just going to leave that one.
Yep, it's just 10 rupees. You save the smith's life, so he cuts you a little break on the price of the sword upgrade. We are just both of them picking up the rupees now from different huts. But yeah, like I said, we want a collecting spree. We need rupees later for.
We'll need
for the flippers.
For the flippers, you're right on that
right.
one.
Right. So we pick up a couple of big rupee chests, so we have enough rupees for that later.
Both our runners on excellent pace. Excellent pace.
zer0rush just went through a room that causes some people fits. The mummy statue room can be very obnoxious, but he had actually very good movement through there and got through it cleanly. We'll see if Buane has any issues there, because that's known to be a very unfortunate room. Another hammer jump coming up here from zer0rush. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know, I was just agreeing with you on that one, though. I've always wondered, for the room that zer0rush is in, what is the fastest way to get out of that? I've seen some fall like zer0rush has, I've also seen others mirror, and I've also seen a handful also bonk. So I've always wondered that one.
The way zer0rush did it is the fastest. It gets you out of the room the quickest, and you also have iframes, so you don't have to worry about getting hit by the popo that jumps at you as you exit. But there are benefits to doing it the other way. Number one, you don't lose any hearts if you mirror or bonk over the hole. And if you bonk over the hole instead of mirroring, you actually don't have to mirror from the bombs to the menu from the bombs to the mirror, so it saves a little time that way too.
And zer0rush into the second in the back half of Skull Woods, and on his way to fight Mofula.
Yeah, the bomb jump makes this a very, very quick segment. You skip pretty much everything. You just get a key so you can get over to... you get the big key so you can actually open the big chest. And then once you do that, you just make your way over to the last part of the dungeon after you've gotten the fire rod. And now zer0rush is a moth, so a very short segment here.
This is one of only 2 dungeons where you do not need the big key to actually get to the boss. The other one being Swamp Palace. Fun fact on that one.
zer0rush making good use of the fire rod here. Still getting some bad RNG. The problem with this fight is when you slash Moth into any of the spikes, he actually doesn't take any damage. The spikes will negate the damage that your sword's done. So that's why you saw him have to, you know, add a few slashes there, and it seemed like it took him a little while. So if anyone's ever had an issue with that fight playing the game casually, that's why. It's because you're actually not doing damage half the time because you're hitting him into spikes. And
also with Tempered Sword, spins actually will not damage him as well, since they deal Gold Sword damage, and Gold Sword damage is equal to the spike in that room, so basically it still treats it as if he was hit by a spike.
Yep, exactly right. So that's why you see the dash at the beginning, and you know, if he decides to hang around the spikes, you'll see people using the fire rod like zer0rush did there to try to kind of coax him away from it.
So you now see zer0rush on his way to pick up the Quake Medallion and the flippers.
Buane going for the tough strat in the Mummy Hellway. Has a little bit of trouble there, but he then switches to a little slightly easier version of it.
So Buane, you know, better be careful as only at 3 hearts right now.
Very
It's
solid
a very
fight
clean
for
fight.
Buane. Yeah.
And zer0rush actually getting the, I guess, Popo Lottery is how it's been, you know, nicknamed with the one. Is it a Popo out in the real world, or I should say in the dark world or not? I know they're the Popos in the light world, but not sure there.
I just called them Popos the whole time, so I agree with you.
And zer0rush getting the bonk setup for the free quick warp. You want to explain that one? Because I know what it is, and I know how to get them. I just almost never get them on my own.
So the reason we bonk there is to line up the quick warp. We bonk against that little hill on the right there. And so, yeah, we actually haven't explained this yet. So what a quick warp is if you enter a warp to the dark world, or you mirror on a very specific X coordinate. It actually is an X coordinate. It's where the camera or the screen's positioning, not Link's positioning. If you have the screen in a specific position, then you will actually skip about a half a second of the transition from the light world to the dark world, and vice versa.
And zer0rush paying his 500 rupees for his flippers, also known as the finger webs in the Japanese version. While Buane is on his way to pick up his Quake and his flippers as well. zer0rush is making his way now to Ice Palace. Oh, and opting to pick up, well, to drop off the mushroom now. Haven't seen this strat, you know, in a while.
zer0rush taking some unfortunate damage there, but it shouldn't cost him too much. You want to make sure you have sword beams when you get to the conveyor room right before the bomb jump coming up, because that can make that room go a little faster. And there is a heart that you can get in the room before the conveyor room. So taking anything less than equal to or less than a heart of damage up to that point is not that big of a deal.
Very true, and there's also a heart, as I believe you mentioned, in the Stealthhouse room as well.
Right. That got a little iffy for zer0rush there, but he ended up getting through that bombable floor room pretty cleanly, but he just has to remember to make sure he hits the switch. Oh, he was short on bombs there too, Oh, and the heart refill didn't fill him up, so he's not going to be able to use the beam strats in this conveyor room. But yeah, there he goes. He's making sure that he hits that switch so it's blue as he enters the bomb jump. So this is a very, very precise trick. You only have a few pixels that you can stand on when you plant the bomb, and then you have to stand in a very specific position when the bomb explodes. And oh, unfortunately, he misses there the first time, but he's in position the second time. And he should cleanly get through this room. Yep, bonk over this hole, and then just walk out.
And while zer0rush is on his way towards Cold Stare, but Buane just picked up his flippers and is making his way to Ice Palace now as well.
Now, damage boosting through that big spike is actually the fastest way to get to that room. If you slash. If you don't slash, it'll knock you back a little bit. But if you slash, it kind of preserves your position as you go through it. zer0rush on a very good pace here, heading into Cold Stare. This is one of the most execution-heavy fights in the game, depending on the strat you go for. And based on what I've seen of zer0rush so far, I assume he's going to go for one of the 2 or 3 harder strats. See, he's got a sword out, he's going to do a spin, and it looks like he's doing poke dashes, and oh, unfortunately, they got away from him a little bit, but not too much, so it only takes a couple of extra slashes to kill that last puff and pick up the heart. And
a very clean fight too.
Segment. Yeah, very clean segment overall.
Now, knowing both of our runners, I know neither of them are going to be going after the gold sword and the silver arrows, which would normally require a route deviation, which would be going to Mire instead of Swamp next, but because our runners are so skilled, they're probably going to decide to skip that safety.
Yeah, silver arrows is a safety, and gold sword are safeties that get dropped pretty early on by most runners. But we'll see the route they decide to take. And if you were paying attention to Buane's side, ooh, that was risky. He could have fallen in that hole and have to do the bomb jump again. He got through the bomb jump pretty cleanly, though, so good job there. But he did use the sword beams to kill the jellies in the conveyor room, which made him get through it a little bit quicker.
And zer0rush opting to pick up Ether during the Mire segment. I know this is also one of the segments where, you know, quite a few runners will opt to pick up Ether instead of, you know, before Mire.
Right, it's a little faster if you get it in the Mire segment because you have the hook shot, but we'll explain that later. And that's why most people opt to get it in the Mire segment. But if you get it in the Swamp segment, it actually makes the overworld movement for Mire easier, and it's better to have full hearts going into Mire. So sometimes people will do it for that reason. It's just to guarantee that you'll have full hearts going into the Mire dungeon. Let's see how Buane decides to go about this fight. A little bit differently so far. Oh, he'll go for the 6 slash strat after the initial spin. And very clean fight. Yeah, that was actually, with the little mess up and having to do some extra slashes by zer0rush, that was actually probably executed slightly quicker. That strat overall is slightly slower, though, than what zer0rush attempted. Very interesting. There's a bomb pickup right above where that key was for zer0rush, but he decided to pick up the bomb at the very top of the room. I haven't seen that before, but he will need 2 bombs coming out of this segment. So he had to pick up that one, and there's one in a restock room later on that he'll pick up as well.
Very, very true. Though I have heard it argued about picking up the bomb, the chest inside the dam, because that does contain 3 bombs as well. So I guess it's what, about maybe half a second to a second slower, I'd say, just to pick up that chest instead of, you know, the restock room and the one in the beginning part of Swamp.
Yeah, it's a little bit slower, but given that he got that one, I'm assuming he'll get the restock room.
More than likely.
Alright, So the swamp segment is just full of enemy RNG and annoyingness. We're pretty overpowered, as this is the second dungeon that you are meant to go through in the Dark World, but it's our 5th dungeon that we're going through, and we're pretty stacked with hearts and got a lot of items. So it's more of an annoyance getting hit than anything, and you can lose a lot of time just getting, smacked around. But there's not really ever a threat of death. It does happen every now and then if you get particularly bad RNG or executing poorly enough, as we saw in the last run, in the last race. The two of them seem to have pretty low hearts, so it does happen, but for the most part, the damage you take is just an annoyance in terms of time.
Very true. Now, I do not know whether or not both of them know the Zero Cycle for Argus. I'm assuming both of them do. The Zero Cycle on that one being a combination of the item dash and just constantly hookshotting, if I recall correctly.
Right, so based on zer0rush's gameplay, I assume he'll go for the Zero Cycle. He's done a lot of pretty high-level stuff for most of the run and the other bosses, so we will see what he does, but I'm assuming he'll go for the Zero Cycle. And I'll explain that a little bit before, or as we get closer.
zer0rush just about to pick up his hookshot. I will quote the English text, in this one with it saying boing, boing, boing. Guess the developers really love that.
The classic English text, yeah.
Well, hey, it's so classic that they actually added it to the randomizer with the Master Sword pedestal saying that for the hookshot.
Okay, I'm looking for little stuff to talk about in this dungeon, and there's just really not much. You can get a couple RNGs with that jelly that zer0rush dashed through. There's a couple different ways to deal with it, but he's either electrocuting when you enter the room or he's not, and you just deal with it accordingly.
I agree with you there. Both of our runners executing so well that it's, with a joy to watch and a little hard to commentate on. But I guess that's a positive.
Yeah, it's pretty clean so far. Now, zer0rush is getting to Argus, so I'll start explaining the way the Zero Cycle works. Sorry about that. So the way that works is you have to do an item dash so that a poke will do full sword damage when you're holding the sword out. Once you get into that state, you have to hook the puffs continuously in a very specific... Oh, it looks like zer0rush missed the initial item dash with the hook shot. And now he has to reposition and resort to hooks and slashes. So yeah, I'll just continue explaining it as he finishes up the fight. You also have to time your hooks in a very specific manner so that the pokes don't cause your sword to retract. So you continue holding your sword out and you can continue to poke them. So it's the timing of the hook shot in relation to when you poke them that causes you to keep the sword out. So he cleans up the fight nicely. He gets the quick kill in the second part of that fight where Argus jumps up and then back down by using the fire rod there.
Now, I do have to note, as has been said before, this cutscene that zer0rush is having to sit through with the second Crystal Maiden is argued as the longest cutscene in the game, if I recall correctly, or at least as far as the crystal messages go.
Yeah, this is the longest. That is the longest text to sit through after the crystals.
And zer0rush on his way to pick up Ether, which, as you said before, is actually a lot faster. And oh, zer0rush getting blocked by a dead rock. Hopefully he will be able to avoid all those boulders.
when you get blocked by dead rocks like that, oh, that is unfortunate. He blocks himself again. Oh, he was able to squeeze past. Let's see. Okay, he's going to do a hook dash here. So I wanted to explain briefly. Hook dashing actually puts you in that glitch state. So that's part of the reason that it causes your sword poke to do full sword slash damage in the Argus fight. It puts you in a bit of a glitch state, which is another way, like the spin dash that we explained before, allows you to get spin speed off of stairs.
And again, yes, we really haven't given our runners a shout out, you know, so if you're liking what you're seeing, please remember to follow zer0rush and Buane on Twitch. I'm sure someone could drop the command for that one in chat.
So, I have not been looking at the chat much. I've been trying to focus on the runs as much as possible, but I do see a question, what NMG stands for. It stands for no major glitches, and just to sum up what that means is there's plenty of glitches in the game. Some of them break the game and allow you to access areas very early that you shouldn't. So in this specific category, we only allow glitches that don't allow for any major sequence breaks. Alright, zer0rush has picked up the medallion and the ice rod on his way over to Mire, so opening that up now, while Buane is on his way up Death Mountain for his little collecting spree before he gets over to the dungeon.
Now, will zer0rush do the bird toss, I wonder?
The bird toss, classic bird toss meme that started back in the last NMG tournament a couple of years ago. But I haven't seen it that much this tournament, so we'll see if it makes a comeback or not as the tournament progresses. Very, very good Mire 2 room there. It's good to have sword beams in that room, because if you execute that room well, it's faster with sword beams than without, and zer0rush just showed you pretty much the quickest way to deal with that room, especially given the RNG he got.
True, and while zer0rush is on his way to pick up his big key in Mire, Buane just picked up his ether and is fluting towards Mire himself.
I didn't see Buane get the ice rod, so I guess he'll get that after Mire. That's actually interesting. Most runners don't do that anymore. They decide to get the ice rod before entering Mire instead of after.
If I recall correctly, it's still in the world record for getting it after Mire, though Buane opting to carry the bird into Mire instead of throwing it. And a very nice clean second room in Mire for Buane as well. zer0rush just picking up his big key and is now going to get his Cane of Samaria. Very interesting item, the Cane of Samaria, as it is, you know, an item that not only makes blocks but also platforms.
Yeah, the Samaria's Cane of Samaria is a very interesting item, and it's useful in a lot of different places in the late game. But yeah, this has been a very, very exciting race so far, as you can tell. So zer0rush coming up on that now. And it looked like he had roughly a 127, somewhere in the 127 range for his torches, so that's very, very good pace for him as well. He's definitely on PB's pace if he can execute the rest of the run in the same fashion. And Buane is also at the torches at 109, so he's on a very good pace himself. Alright, so we'll be using the Cane of Samari a little bit as we get through here. We saw it in that last room, and now we'll use a nice little trick here to get to hit this crystal switch quickly. Oh, he does use the item dash there with the Cane of Samaria, which is a cool little trick that's used in a couple of places. Now, he had 1 bomb when he used that bomb. Now he has 0, which automatically menus him to the fire rod. So that actually saves you a menu. Making sure you only have 1 bomb there saves a menu there, which is, you know, roughly a second or so. Which is a little optimization that a lot of the top runners go for, because it's free basically as long as you keep track of your bombs.
And zer0rush taking on Vitreous right now. Now you notice that he is going into the collection of eyeballs. If you notice, he is stepping in that darker green slime to first pick up at least 1 heart of damage, as in order to go in there with the iframes in order to save time and, you know, health, you know, while taking him out with spins. And Vitreous is down.
Yeah, so that is a pretty tricky fight because the eyeballs will do 4 hearts of damage, while the goo only does 1. So you can use the goo to damage boost into the eyes and just spin away at them and do a ton of damage to them. But it is risky because if one decides to kind of dodge and go stray out of the way, you know, you will tank 4 hearts of damage. And if you don't have enough hearts, you know, dying at that fight causes you to have to walk through the dungeon again, so it is pretty risky.
And zer0rush is headed, you know, to Turtle Rock after, you know, rescuing the 6th maiden, and he's on his way to rescue Zelda. And Buane making his way, you know, during his Vitreous fight, gets down the first group of eyeballs, and now the second group.
Yeah, very cleaned fight there by Buane as well. Just finishing off with the arrows. Man, zer0rush is having a tough time with these dead rocks, these squirrels. He's almost blocked himself a couple times now. But he does end up getting through those couple of screens very quickly, and that is probably a lot of the top runners' least favorite overworlds. It's because of all the dead rocks and all the boulders and all the RNG, but zer0rush gets through pretty cleanly.
I'd say the one of the upside stacks of having powder is actually being able to powder them and actually be able to get rid of them before hitting them with a weapon. Now I couldn't see if zer0rush got the Quake Dash set up, which is the same way as using Quake as an item dash, which also does set up the spin speed in order to be able to drop faster, you know, down there. But looks like he didn't.
Yeah, it's really interesting. If you item dash with a medallion, it also puts you in that state. That's one of the few items that actually does that. Yeah, Buane is getting the ice rod now on his way to Turtle Rock. This is, like I said, this is an older strategy that you don't really see much, especially by people who you know, pick up the game within the last like year or so. So it's very interesting to see this.
As I said, if I recall correctly, it is still in the current world record strat as that way, so it still is, you know, still a viable strategy.
zer0rush going for the damage boost strat there. The torches room we just did is interesting. We actually do that room the opposite way of what's intended, and then we hook shot to fall so that we can get through that room much more quickly than what I assume is the intended route. Hasn't gotten the fairy drop just yet, so he has that to look forward to still, going into chomps. Oh no! He got blocked by one of the chomps, and you know, if you run this game, you know how annoying this room is. And oh my god, and they troll him as he's on his way out too, and they bite him for another 4 hearts of damage. So I believe he still has the fairy drop coming up from one of the pokies, so as long as he gets the drop soon, he'll be able to recover that health. He's only got 10 arrows here, so he's going to need to pick up a backup, which I think he'll do right here. Yep, there he goes.
I believe he'll try to pick up the fairy drop in the 2 pokey room before the first big key door in the dungeon.
Getting decent RNG, the bottom right RNG. And there he gets the fairy as he gets bunnied, so you can't really not get bunnied in that situation. So, you know, you just have to kind of take it, but he gets the fairy drop there, refills his health, and he should be good for the rest of the dungeon. Getting that fairy drop at any point in the dungeon makes this, you know, a lot less nerve-wracking.
Or bringing powder, like Buane is.
Pokey 2 for zer0rush, and we'll see Buane going through this room that I explained before. You just fire rod, and then you switch to the hook quick, and if you're fast enough, you can hook to the left and just fall down and easily make it to the door in time.
And zer0rush opting to use the iframes on the roller there. Would you say he is on a sub 130 pace, or at least a sub, 134 pace?
Oh, he's definitely on a sub 130 pace. I'm not sure what his PB is, if it's 134 or 129. I'd have to be fact checked there, but he's definitely on sub 130 pace. So I don't know if he's on PB pace, but I think he had Mire torches at 127, and he hasn't made any major mistakes, so I would assume he's still on PB pace if his PB is a 134 or a 129. Clean laser skip for zer0rush, clean Pokey 3 room, the grid room there, and now he's on his way to Trinex. He's got 7 hearts. Trinex hits pretty hard, but unless things go totally awry, he should be good here. I'm assuming he's going to do backdoor strat, right? So he takes out the ice rod, kills off the fire head, and then... So the thing here is when a head is exploding, when anything's exploding in a boss battle, you actually can't menu, so... If you were paying close enough attention, you would see that he switched to the fire rod before slashing that last slash on the fire head, so that he already had the item he needed out before he wasn't able to menu.
So according to chat, apparently zer0rush is running against a 129.01 on his splits. So I can only assume that is his current PB, but it has yet to be submitted.
We see Buane making use of some beam strats, so if you do get the fairy early enough and you don't take too much damage, like take damage from chops or things like that, there are a few beam strats in Turtle Rock that are slightly faster. Like hitting the crystal switch and in that room that you just saw and the other Poke room before it. A 119 flat sword up there for zer0rush on Trinex, having a very, very solid run.
And I know chat is starting to wish zer0rush, good luck as he goes into Ganon's Tower and a possible new PB.
Unfortunately, he takes some damage from the Lionel. That's uncharacteristic from someone who's shown, you know, this much potential and this much knowledge of the game and the run. Shouldn't be terrible. I mean, Ganon's tower is scary, but there's definitely places for refill, and you know, it's not terribly scary that he should have a major problem with it from that.
Very true. While zer0rush is just entering Ganon's tower, Buane is just about to enter his Trinex fight. So do you think he'll?
Sorry, go ahead.
Do you think he'll go from the front side or the back?
We'll see. It looks like, yeah, he's going on from the front side here. A little bit safer, a little bit easier to set up. Oh, unfortunately. Oh, good reactions there. He does get ice floored a little bit, but again, he switched over to the ice rod before he had to, before he made that killing slash on the firehead. So he was able to just walk right over and start attacking the ice head.
I know it's not impossible to it's not impossible to be able to switch your weapons. It's just a very precise frame window. And Buane gets his Trinex down and is just about to pick up his heart container and the crystal for Zelda. And then he'll be making his way to Ganon's tower.
Yeah, at this point it looks like zer0rush has a good enough of a lead, but he did take some damage, and we could see some trouble later on. So still anyone's game, depending on how the execution of Ganon's tower goes. zer0rush going to the first of the 3 Light World refights that are all, you know, have some different little level of difficulty added to them. This almost has an ice floor, makes it a little tougher to walk around unless you have a lot of experience with the fight. So you'll see that zer0rush is going to end the fight at the top of the room so he can dash out.
And he'll pick up the 10 arrows, you know, on the left back, on the chest to the left in the back of the big key room.
Right, and you need to make sure you have at least 8 arrows coming out of there. You need 8 arrows for mimics, and you don't want to rely on an arrow drop from them. You usually get one, but it's better not to rely on it.
There's also a couple of pots in the second mimic room that also can have these 5 arrows in there. It's supposed to have it all the time, but it is a little spotty on that one. Ooh, and missing his first shot on one of the mimics. Careful, Russ. Careful.
He had a very solid Mimics 1, but this Mimics 2, you know, he's got to pick up those arrows that were dropped just to make sure he has enough to shoot at that last Mimic, and he gets through cleanly, but he took a decent amount of damage from beams and the Mimics themselves, so this could start getting iffy depending on how, you know, how bad the Gauntlet RNG is for him.
Now, do you think he'll go for the safety fairies or not?
I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I think
he
is.
He did take out the bombs, yeah, so he's gonna... Right.
Which isn't a bad play. I mean, he's on PB pace. Even with taking the 3 to 5 seconds to pick up those fairies, it shouldn't cost him that much time.
Yeah, and it's much better to, you know, he knows he's in the lead, or maybe he doesn't, I'm not sure, but it's much safer regardless to just make sure you don't risk taking a death here. Getting a little bit unfortunate RNG here in the Gauntlet 3, but he is able to clean it up, not terribly.
Now, I do not know if either of our runners can hover or not, so more than likely we will see them both fighting Moldorm 2.
zer0rush getting some unfortunate RNG there. You can one-cycle this fight, the Lambo 2 fight, but what makes it a little harder is that little beam guy in the corner, which can be a little annoying. And obviously the RNG can cost you to not be able to get a one-cycle there as well. We see Buane going through the Ice Armos fight now. Again, like he did with the first Armos fight, he's going to end the fight at the top of the room. But this time there's a door there, and that little optimization helps to make that a little quicker. Ooh, he's doing a little dance in front of the door, but he gets through. zer0rush coming up towards the end game now. He's going to pick up that magic, so he has it for the torches in this room. He's coming up to Moldorm 2 quickly enough, and then we're on to Agatu and Ganon.
So let's listen to all the best when it comes to Agatu RNG.
Ooh, an interesting Mimics 2 strat coming out from Buane. I haven't seen that one before, but definitely something he's practiced because all those arrows landed pretty cleanly. Oh, and Buane also decides to jump down into the spike pit from the side of the room, which is something you don't see often either.
I know a few runners have considered doing it, as it is a tiny bit safer, and if you're not familiar or, you know, are a little bit worried about getting bodied by their spikes, it does make a bit more sense to do that.
Right. Now, what's supposed to make the Moldorm fight a little bit harder is the platform is supposed to be a little narrower and harder to navigate, but you have a much stronger sword, so it doesn't really take as much time to kill him, so he gets through that fight pretty cleanly. Not getting the best RNG here. It looks like he's using a lot of sword spins, but ends it with slashes there, and pretty clean fight.
And while zer0rush is on his way to Ganon, Buane gets through the gauntlet and just takes down Landwallis 2, and is on his way to Moldorm 2.
Yeah, Buane having a pretty good run himself. Now it looks like zer0rush is going to split here just after a 127, so if he has a very good Ganon fight, he still has a chance for a PB here against his 129.01, so hopefully he will get the 1-on-1 here. Alright, so he gets the one cycle in the first phase. Oh no, he hook shots over to that lantern, unfortunately. You want to stay flush with the bottom there to make sure you don't hook shot over to that lantern because it messes up the cycles. So he will not get the 1-on-1, but he should be able to clean it up here. And now he has taken damage from those fire bats, so he only has 2.5 hearts. A hit from a bat will not kill him, but a direct Ganon hug will. So now Ganon has gotten to warping, giving him a couple extra warps. That's pretty unlucky RNG already. I mean, I think the average here is 2 or 3 warps, and he's already gotten an extra 4, so... There we go, no extra warps that time. Buane making use of that powder on the anti-fairy just before getting to Moldorm 2. And we got zer0rush starting off phase 4 here. He's going to be using the lantern for the torch glitch there. The torch glitch is a very simple glitch. If you light the left torch before the right torch goes out, the right torch stays lit the entire time. So all you have to do is worry about that left torch, and every light of the left torch you have time for 3 spins, which you know, depending on the timing, can be tougher or easier. But you need a total of 12 spins here on this last phase. So getting in those cycles of 3 make it a lot easier to keep track of how many more slashes you need as well.
Let's get your GGs in chat for zer0rush. While he is about to enter the Triforce room, Buane is on his way to Ganon.
going to check out Buane's PB again real quick because I don't remember it off the top of my head. But a very good run by zer0rush there. Doesn't quite PB, but very solid execution for the most part.
Agreed on that one. And Buane is working on his phase 2 cannon right now.
There you go. He stays flush with the bottom. He doesn't accidentally hook to the other side, so it looks like he's going to get the 1-in-1. Does take some damage from the bat there. Oh, another hit from the bat there. And he is on PB pace here, given he has a good run against Ganon with not a lot of warps in this part. He's gotten unlucky a little bit already, but as long as it doesn't get too out of hand. Unfortunately, we don't have a timer set here for him. I know he started the fight at a decent time for him to possibly get a PB, but it really depends on the RNG and his execution of phase 4.
And Ganon being super trolly to go for our runners today. I'm just hoping that at least one of them does manage to PB, because right now Ganon's, acting like he just wants to say, nope, no one's PBing.
Buane, they're using the lantern for the torch glitch there as well, and then switching out to the fire, just as zer0rush did. If you make too many mistakes with the fire rod, you have to be careful, just because you don't want to run out of magic here. If you run out of magic, there's no way to finish the fight. So after another, I thought he might have gone for another fire rod shot, but he does switch to the lantern early, knowing that he has, missed a few of those. So just to make sure he has enough magic, he switches to the lantern. Oh, switches back to the fire rod.
And GG to Buane as well.
Great job there, Buane. Kept us cool. He did bring the fire rod back out, got his confidence back, and he got the cycle, the 3 hits per torch glitch cycle out. So a very good finish there. I don't have his timer up, so I'm not sure if that was a PB, but I do know it was very close. But great job by both runners.
Do you happen to have the Speed Racing TV chat open between them? Do you want to know? Do you want to ask if either of them wants to come in for an interview?
Sure thing.
And while we're waiting to see if either of our runners would like to come in for an interview, I'd like to remind you all to please follow our runners zer0rush and Buane, who have put on an excellent race today.
Yeah, great race. zer0rush just executed really well and got out to a really early start that unfortunately Buane wasn't able to close the gap, but the consistency of zer0rush's run really is what kept him ahead. And Buane didn't really have a bad run of his own. He was on PB pace for most of the run and, right up to the end. Like I said, I'm not sure what his final time was, so I can't say if he did PB or not, but I know it was close. So I just started looking in chat, and according to Village, it looks like he was just, based on his own stream, he was just over his PB, and that's Ganon warps right there. That's just the RNG factor, which is really unfortunate. Each of those warps will cost you roughly 1.5 to 2 seconds, depending on where he warps from, what position to what position. So, and I know he got a few extra warps there. I wasn't counting the whole time, but I know it was more than the average. So that's unfortunate, but you know, it's just the way the game goes. And he did execute well enough to put himself in PB position. So good on him there. And it looks like we have zer0rush here. Has decided to join us, and Buane should be joining us in a moment. But zer0rush, hey, great job there. You weren't too far behind your PB, and I know Buane was close to his PB as well, so great race by both of you. Was there anything notable in the run that was making you nervous, or you know, that you wanted to discuss with us?
Well, nothing major. I mean, the entire run was kind of nerve-wracking. It's my first restreamed NMG run, so I was a bit nervous the whole way, but luckily didn't make any major mistakes. The kind of salty about Mire, because without that dead rock, that would have been gold, but you know, other than a disastrous Ganon's tower, I think I pulled it together there at the end to not like die anywhere with 4 hearts, and it was nuts.
Yeah, and the dead rocks were giving you problems like a lot of the time I saw you on Death Mountain, and you know, up to Hera, over to before Mire as you were picking up the medallion, and on your way to Turtle Rock. So you know, that's just the name of the game sometimes.
Anywhere
but like I said, you did execute really well and kept yourself in PB position. Dead rocks were giving you problems.
And it looks like we have Buane also joining us in chat. You know. Well, in the booth here. GG to you too, sir.
Thank you, GG0.
GG's.
So Buane, I heard that you were just a few seconds off of your PB. Am I right?
I was 24 seconds ahead going into Ganon, and I don't know what that phase 4 was, but it was not PB worthy. That's for sure.
I mean, you know, the nerves going into Ganon is the worst because he is easily the hardest fight, and you know, arguably one of the hardest segments in the game. So keep your head up, because I know you got a lot of extra warps too. So hey, yeah, RNG is RNG,
it wasn't,
you know, but you did execute really well for the rest of the run.
Phase 3 wasn't the friendliest, but I lost. I didn't get a single 3 cycle hit on the torch at all in that phase. That phase 4 was just bad. So
yeah, basically Ganon said nope to the pair of you because you both had an opportunity and both missed new PBs by the slimmest of margins, and it was basically down to Ganon RNG, which is sad as anything.
Yeah, but you guys did great. You put on a great race.
Yeah, I'll take this. Sounds like we were both right there with our PBs. That's pretty good. Wasn't the cleanest run for me, but my Dark World was good after a really terrible Light World. But I mean, we all know what a terrible Light World feels like.
Yeah, and it happens all too often as well. So I just had a couple questions for you. I think both of you on your tourney bio said that you zer0rush, you say you've been playing this game less than a year. Can you give us a little bit more specificity on when you started speedrunning this?
Yes, so I mean, obviously I've played the game a lot in my life, but I just started playing it more recently when the last year's randomizer tournament started. My friend got me into that. And then after that was over, I joined the regular Link to the Past Discord, or I guess it splintered off or something, and I started running the actual game. So I was doing it a little bit off and on while playing randomizer. Like 6 months ago was when I submitted my first time to the leaderboard, and then just like a month or two ago in preparation for the tournament, really started playing and practicing a lot more.
Yeah, you've been improving really quickly too. You know, to have just started roughly 6 months ago and already have a sub 130 is pretty incredible stuff. So the practice is definitely paying off.
Yeah, hoping for 127 soon. Actually, we'll see. My PB, my 129.01, has a minute time loss in Swamp Palace from not hitting the switch after draining the or flooding the dam. So there's a lot of time saved there.
Yeah, always those little mistakes that you know, haunt you when you're just trying to get better times, especially under sub 130. Even under sub 130, it's those little mistakes that cost a lot of time. But over to Buane, I have here that. Whoops, I lost my place. Here we go. I have here that you only started in the summer as well, so roughly 6 months ago. I'm assuming it was around the time that you know, the rando craze started.
Yeah, exactly. I picked it up at the midpoint, I think, of the spring rando tournament last year. Started really playing a lot more in the fall, and got into NMG shortly after the NMG tournament was announced. I hadn't done an NMG run. Probably not alone in this fact. I hadn't done an NMG run when I signed up for the tournament, and I was on the waiting list for a while. It wasn't looking like I was going to get in, and as people started to drop and that PB deadline came closer, I said, you know, might get in the tournament, might want to get a PB in here. So, yeah, the rando skills help somewhat. There's obviously a lot more specific knowledge that goes into the NMG run, but it's coming along. I'd hope to get under 130 at some point soon, and there's a lot of time to be saved in my runs, so I'd say that's a pretty realistic goal at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you put yourself in position to PB here by a decent chunk of time, and you know, with a little better RNG and a little better execution, like you were saying before, definitely would have come at a pretty good time. But I think, especially with the amount of runs you both have to do for the rest of the tournament with the group stages and then the brackets, I think, you know, it's likely, as long as you keep practicing, you'll both see some good times. So I guess I'll just ask, is there anything notable from the run, Buane, that you wanted to discuss? I know that, you know, neither of you suffered any deaths. Buane, you had powder, but it just seemed to be pretty clean runs for both of you overall.
Yeah, just sloppiness in the light world. I think I hit the crab. I've never done this. I hit the crab on the way to fake flipper, and I am notorious for soft locking during fake flipper, so maybe I was just too focused in on the fake flipper there, but I had like 1.5 hearts after delivering the old man. So I've never done this before, but I took the health refill by talking to the old man for 6 or 7 seconds, and then my Hera was ugly, so those back-to-back desert and Hera splits were just gross to look at for a while. But yeah, a couple things that, you know, I guess you got to be prepared for the unexpected in a tournament run, because you can't just kind of wipe it out and reset. You got to know your backups, and you got to be able to roll with stuff when you see something you've never seen before, or you make a mistake you've never made before, and can't let it throw you too much. But I spent a couple minutes there in the light world, tilted a bit, I have to admit.
Yeah, and that just comes with experience, and you guys are still fairly new. I'm sure you've gotten plenty of runs in, but you know, that stuff just comes with running the game more and just knowing, you know, and that's definitely a good judgment call at that point. Like, hey, I could end up losing a lot of time if I died the wrong place in Hera. So in a race situation, you know, you definitely got to go with safer play there. So unless either of you has anything else to add, I think we are going to take a short break and allow the restreamers to set up for the next race, which, let me check the schedule real quick.
There is one at 10 that is going to be on this channel, if I recall correctly, for the NMG tournament. And then apparently there's also going to be a Super Mario Sunshine race starting at 11 on Speed Gaming 3.
Very good. Yeah, the link to the past race coming up is going to be, I'm going to butcher this name, so I'm doing my best, but it's Yellsfrak versus D-Rock 91384. So that will hopefully be another really fun race to watch. That'll be commentated by Jedab and Ninnies. And yeah, before we get off, just Buane, zer0rush, both really great jobs. I know it was just off your PBs, so good luck going forward and getting PBs, and you know, really clean runs from you both overall. It's great execution.
And please,
thank you.
And please, chat, don't forget to follow our runners on Twitch, as well as my fellow co-commentator.
Oh, I'm Dude Bro Sick, by the way. I might have said that once. I don't know.
You did. And then I am Mages1. Again, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the tournament. Well, hope you enjoyed this race, and hope you stick around for the next NMG race in about 15 minutes.
yeah, so thanks so much for watching, and stick around, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon. And thanks to everyone who is watching, and thanks to the runners. And all right, see you soon.